All right, so code of conduct. Hello, everyone. And I think while doing this, I'll introduce myself as well. My name is Sadhu Zala. I'm one of the co-chair, co-lead for IBM Cloud Provider SubProject of Cloud Provider SIG. Welcome to the monthly meeting. We had a little time change this time, considering Thanksgiving holidays in United States. So instead of last Wednesday, we are meeting today. And I'll be your meeting host today. Please keep in mind that this meeting is a public meeting, and so be nice to each other. We always are. And this meeting is being recorded, and we will make it available on the public YouTube channel of Kubernetes. Let's just introduce ourselves real quick. We have a new member on the call as well today. So let's just start with, I'm just going in a row that Richard, would you wanna go next?
Sure, Richard Tyson. I work on IKS, IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service, and ROCs, which are Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud Managed Services. I'm the update squad lead for those two, and also co-chair of our provider user group here. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you. Brad, would you like to go now?
Sure, I'm Brad Topol, IBM's Distinguished Engineer for Open Technologies and Developer Advocacy. I lead the team that contributes upstream to Kubernetes, and I'm a member of the Kube Conformance Workgroup and a KubeDoc maintainer.
Yep, that's great, Brad. Thank you. Bandito, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Benedetto Lo Giudice. I work for SysDig, DevOps in the infra team, and we run. I work particularly on IKS. We run several production applications on IKS.
All right, great. Thanks. And then Dennis, you wanna go ahead, please?
Yeah, my name is Dennis Paraquay. IBM employee. I work at I work on IBM Cloud, doing things like deployments. I'm an actual customer of IBM Kubernetes servers.
All right, that's great. That's great. And that leaves Martin Hickey, who is also our speaker today. I guess let's start with you, Martin, and your talk before we sort of go in any other discussions around the project. So I take it from here, Martin.
Okay, Sadhu, thank you very much. Is it okay if I share a deck?
Absolutely, please go ahead.
Sadhu, I think I'm disabled from sharing. Do you mind enabling me, please?
Oh, you couldn't share, okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me make you co-host, Martin. That should let you share.
It's good to see you've the security on Zoom, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wanna try now?
Yeah, just 1 second. I'll just find what I'm looking for. Okay, can you see the deck?
Yep.
And I'll just go to full mode. Can you see it in full mode, or do you see it in presenter mode?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Looks good.
It's like full.
Okay. That's great. Sometimes, when you share like that, it just gets mixed up. So thank you very much for having me on this evening, Sadev and colleagues. So what I'd like to talk this evening about is the current status of Helm, because there's been a couple of changes in Helm over in November this year. So I'd just like to talk through them, where Helm's at the moment, and anyone that's using it to just give an update where to go on it. So my name is Martin Hickey. I'm a senior software engineer in IBM, and I'm also a core maintainer in the Helm community. And I also make contributions to the SIG node area around Create tools, etc. And you can see my my social handles there if you'd like to reach out at any stage. So I just wanted to, when we look at here, there's just a couple of points here I want to talk through, and then we'll go through in a bit more depth to them in the preceding slides, the subsequent slides. So to start with, Helm version 2 went end of life in the November 13th this year. And this is a follow-on from an announcement we made when we released Helm 3 this time last year, that we would give, the community would give 1 year support for Helm v2, and then basically the support would finish up from there. So currently the Helm v3, which was released in around, as I said, this time last year, is the current supported version. So that is the version we'll talk about in a minute we'd suggest people to move on to. Also, as part of the major release we had in 2019, in November 2019, was that the Charts GitHub project would become unsupported, and that Charts would then be hosted by different parts of the community, and that's where the supported version of the Charts go forward, and we'll discuss that again in a minute as well. And also that the Charts repository would then become archived, and as I said, you check out where you think the where you'd look for where the latest hosted version of the Charts are that are supported. And finally then, the Artifact Hub has now become the key location for finding Helm charts. So this is just a very, very simple website that gives you a way to search across for the different versions of Helm charts that are out there, where those charts are hosted, so that if you want to use those charts, you can then add the particular host into your repository list when you're using Helm. So what we discussed a minute ago, that Helm v2 is going to end of life. So what does this mean to users? So I suppose the key point here is there's no longer to be any more updates or releases. So the last release was version 2.17, and that was probably the end of October timeframe. So yes, you can still use that release. If you're going to be staying on Helm v2 for the moment, we would suggest you to upgrade to the latest version of the 2.x release, so 2.17, and then maybe start looking at a plan to migrate over to Helm v3. So what does Helm v3 give you? So Helm v3 then is obviously the latest release, and it's going to give you all the new features, any bug fixes, security issues, etc. So it's a supported release. So this would be our recommendation to move over there as soon as possible. So it may be that you want to migrate. So there's probably two situations here. If you're starting out with Helm for the first time, then obviously you can start with Helm v3. If you've already been using Helm v2, but you don't need any more of those releases that you've deployed, then you can just start using Helm v3 straight off. Otherwise, if you want to keep managing existing Helm v2 releases, then you'll need to do a migration. And the reason for this is the differences between the two releases, and under the hood, the plumbing in the architecture is quite different, and how we store the release information between the two releases are different. So probably for most people, if you've heard of Helm v3, it's been obviously getting rid of Tiller, the service that we had in the cluster for communicating directly to the Kubernetes API service. And with Helm v3, then it talks now directly to the client, to the Kubernetes service, so it's no longer needed. But it's important to note that these changes under the hood around the storage of releases, etc., means the differences are there. So you can, in theory or in practice, even have two instances of Helm, the Helm v2 client, the v3 client, managing releases on the same cluster. And what we'd suggest then is if making that move across. So that's why you need a migration in that situation. So I'm not going to cover it in detail here today because I don't want to take up all the time of this SIG call. But we've done a very good workshop around the V2 to V3. And it talks about, it's in two parts. The first part of the workshop's around explaining the history of moving where Helm v2 was, and where it came from, and then moving towards Helm v3 and the reasons for that. And the second part then is a demo which runs through the migration part. So part of this demo which show you the different choices you have in if you want to do a migration. So whether you manage a migration yourself or else using a tool that we provide in the community for doing that migration for you, and that automates it for you. So if you've been used to looking at Helm and using Helm, you realize there's a few parts to Helm, I suppose. The first part is around the configuration you might have, which would be to do with your plugins or your different repository lists. And the second part then is the releases. So the migration shows how you can migrate both of those parts over, and then if you need any cleanup to do afterwards. So we'd recommend you looking at these recordings on the workshops, and also reaching out into the community, into our Slack channels, which are in the Kubernetes Slack workspace. So have a look for Helm users, and if any questions, please reach out there or raise any issues with the community. Now from, I suppose I'll bring maybe Richard and Sadev in on this. So Richard and Sadev, from an IBM Cloud point of view, I suppose what's interesting here is that we, in the documentation, and you'd probably be able to give me more feedback on this, in the documentation, which was very nice, from once Helm v3 was released, the documentation was updated to explain, you know, that Helm 3 was available, and also explain the migration paths on that. So from your experience of talking to customers, have you any feedback from customers on this, or are they looking to make those migrations over to Helm 3?
Yeah, I don't have any feedback that I can share right now, Martin, but I'm pretty sure people should be, and I think they might have started moving, right? Because that's something it's like essential going forward. I don't know, Richard, anything from IKS side? Yeah.
Right. I did let everybody know on our Slack channels, and I think I'll give it to you this way, Martin. I think this will probably be like what I've noticed with Kubernetes is that folks will be content where they're at until they realize they're in trouble. And you might find the same for our users on IKS and Rocks with respect to Helm. Maybe I think if they were using V2, they realize now they have to do something. And this may be just the initial push for folks to do that. I know a lot of folks are prepared for it, but I don't know that everybody's gotten where they need to be. So I was going to ask you the question, if we get these questions coming in, should we point them and say, hey, go look at these, the playlist you have linked here? Is that the best way to get started for the folks?
I think so, because
okay.
we've done quite a bit of work on this. So the very good aspect of this is we had the migration tool ready in September last year, 2019. And this was when Helm v3 was still at the beta release. So what was nice about that was we had a migration path out there, okay? And we know from day one, people hooked onto this because the questions started coming in. And what was a very interesting part, if I just give a little side story on this, was, so one part of it is the cleanup afterwards of Helm v2. So the Helm v2 releases are totally distinct from the Helm v3 releases. So what I mean by that is that's the metadata that tells you what you've deployed from a Helm perspective. So when you do a migration, you don't touch those underlying Kubernetes resources you've deployed. All you're doing is it's the metadata that Helm is managing. So a question came in, and so with the cleanup we had, it was an all for nothing cleanup. So it cleaned up all the Helm v2 releases and removed Tiller and the Helm v2 configuration because it was no longer needed. So we got feedback in for the community, and you know the way things evolve, and someone said, hang on here a second, could we do it that you just, you know, clean up releases to start with? Can we clean up Tiller separately? Because we're probably managing different instances of Tiller within the one cluster using the same Helm v2 client. So what's lovely about this is you really get to see how users push the envelope with products. So we really saw with Helm what people were doing inside the cluster. So we said, that's great. So we put that in. And then someone else came in maybe, I don't know, was it early this year, maybe January this year, February this year? And they said, do you know what, it'd be lovely. Can we just delete on a release by release basis. So for example, if I have a release called, I don't know, foobar, and or else, sorry, maybe if I've deployed Prometheus and I've called it Prometheus 1 into my cluster, and I migrate that over, wouldn't it be nice, once I'm happy with that, I can then just delete that Prometheus instance in Helm v2. So then what they were saying was, you know what, rather than move all over, I'm going to do this on a step-by-step basis. And I'm going to do when I'm really, really happy. And then when I'm happy that that release is over there, that Helm v3 is now managing that correctly, then I will remove it from Helm v2. So those little things kind of grew. So yeah, what I'd say is the workshop is really, really good because we go into it in nice details. It's nicely succinct and goes through all the details. I'll show at the end of the call as well some resources around the documentation that we've out there. And there's been a series of blogs written on it and a lot of different messages on it. And we've got a lot of calls in. So I'd say go through that, but definitely reach out to us in the community as well. On a last point that I'd like to touch on, Richard, and it was very, very valid point what you said is, and we see this in Kubernetes the whole time, like there was a big change in Kubernetes in 2.16, as everyone knows. Did I get 1.16, sorry. And in 1.16 in Kubernetes, it removed a series of APIs that had been listed for deprecation for a while back. So a lot of things, for example, it was the extensions, Alpha 1 for deployment, Alpha 2s, etc., like that, the betas and stuff like that. So these have been on the cards for a while to be removed. And, you know, it's been said, it's been put out public for a long time not to use them. But lo and behold, nothing happened once 1.16 went out. And then suddenly you've seen over the last maybe year or so, all of a sudden you see questions coming in going, hang on, that doesn't deploy anymore. You know, so we've seen it on the Helm side because we have the Helm data stored for that particular thing. If you upgrade your cluster, obviously what happens under the hood with Kubernetes is it doesn't actually upgrade that particular object. It literally just removes it and brings it back up as new. So we've seen a few things around like that, but we see that coming in the whole time. So even though we're at 190 now, going on to 120, there's still people back at 112, 114s, you know. So yeah, it's going to take time. But maybe this will concentrate the mind as well, because once you lose support on a particular product, then, you know, but then again, I suppose that's like when you tell people, you know, put the latest version of the software on your mobile phone or on your laptop. People don't listen sometimes. So yeah. Any other questions you want to ask here?
No, but Martin, can you please share this YouTube link and any doc link in the chat? We can put it in the agenda minutes, you know, for folks to refer later.
Okay, I'll put them into the chat at the very when I'm finished.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yep, once you're done.
Okay. So the second part of this is around the charts repository. So I suppose this is another aspect. So when we talked earlier, we've been talking about Helm the client or Helm the engine, if you want to speak about it. And I often look at this between Helm the charts as, you know, if I think of a similar, it's like your power tool. Your power tool is the engine or the Helm client, and then the charts are the different fixtures you're going to put on your power tool, the different extensions, etc. you're going to put in. So the charts are really a key part of Helm. It is your way of nicely packaging together your app that you're trying to deploy into Kubernetes, defining declaratively the different objects that you're trying to deploy so that your app can run. And you know, these charts can range from a very simple chart which has an Nginx server right up to complex charts around Prometheus and stuff like that have multiple subcharts that are deployed into the cluster in addition to the install of the one umbrella chart. So around here, there's two aspects to this. The first one is, so most people have been using this URL for a long time, and this was where the managed or curated Helm charts were stored. So they were stored in under Google storage under this URL. So as part of I suppose, Helm 3 being released last year, there was also an announcement to say that this storage would no longer be available. And we've been so thankful, I suppose, in the community for Google to be able to host this for so long. So the change should know is that the stable and incubator charts, if you've been using them. So for a lot of people, maybe this doesn't apply because they might have been using, if you've been using the IBM Cloud, you've probably been using the charts that have been provided or have been hosted there, because a lot of these charts are validated and go through a series of security checks. So maybe you haven't been using the public curated ones, but if you have, just notice that you need to update the stable and the incubator paths as I shown here, and they're now under the proxy of charts.helm.sh/stable for stable and /incubator. So the best way to do this is to do a Helm repo remove of your stable, and then to Helm repo add with this particular URL, and the same for the incubator. And the other aspect of this is that the curated charts are now gone to archives, and as a consequence, there'll be no longer any more support or updates on this. So the action here for you on this is to check out whatever charts you are using from the stable or incubator repositories, and look at the README, because README will direct you to where those charts are now hosted. If by chance there isn't a chart that has been hosted yet, then this is an opportunity for you to probably take that chart and try and host it yourself instead. So unless some other community decides to take the chart and host it and manage it going forward. So I suppose the second aspect of that was that because the charts became so large and became so many over a period of time, the chart maintainers were not able to keep the maintenance of these charts up, and as a consequence, a lot of users were getting frustrated by not getting the updates to charts. So now it has been decided that, you know, the people that owned or originally maintained these charts are going to host them where possible. So I think, as I said there, Richard and Sadev, I think from the IBM Cloud perspective and looking at documentation, it's been mostly the charts that have been stored in the IBM charts repository, and as opposed to using charts from stable and incubator.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't checked recently, Martin, so I couldn't confirm or deny that. Yeah.
Okay. That's the best place, right? The IBM chart repository.
Yeah, I think because what happens in that situation is it'll be either charts that are created within IBM itself, or else charts that would have been maybe taken externally and validated and come through. So normally, from what I've seen for the documentation, is the recommendation is to go through the chart repository that way, because you know the charts have been validated and verified and tested. Okay, so to just finish up on resources, so I've added a couple of resources here. First of all is the blog here, which covers a lot of the points I have here today. So that blog was put out just before the November the 13th date, when support for the Helm v2 went end of life and the support finished for the charts repos. Also the workshop that I mentioned earlier, the V223 workshop is there. And we also have a migration doc around doing the migration. And finally then the changes from Helm v2 to Helm v3. So is there any questions anyone would like to ask?
Seems like no question.
No, just this is really helpful to help explain what's going on and where we're heading. So I do appreciate it, Martin.
Say, Martin, do you know if there's anybody on the IBM side that would be like a similar role to you in the community side with respect to guiding internally folks to follow this, get on to Helm 3, get the charts where they need to be, all of that?
Are they in the Helm community, Richard? Is that what you're asking?
No, not necessarily in the Helm community, but anybody kind of leading that IBM charts internally, right? That pulls together all these IBM charts and make sure that everybody in IBM is doing what we recommend here, getting off of V2, going to V3.
I guess something we can take it separately from here, maybe, or
Yeah, we should take that offline, but
Yeah.
Martin will certainly be the focal internal as well.
that's a good question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so anything like that, definitely I can help with that. It'd be great to know what folks need the answers on that. You know?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Because I don't always know if some of some customers may rely on whoever they're relying on for managed service. So maybe it's IBM or maybe it's somebody else, but indirectly there's Helm involved, right? And they may not necessarily follow the community side of things, but maybe they should be.
I know there was updates to some of the charts as well for the rocks. If I pronounce that correctly, I think. So with the rocks, I know because in around when you look at OpenShift or anything like that, so OpenShift originally had Helm v2 as just in development mode, so it wasn't baked in automatically when you used OpenShift, and you had to I suppose tweak it to use it. But once Helm 3 came out, I know that Red Hat embraced Helm 3, and then Helm 3 is out of the box now on OpenShift. I don't know what version, maybe 4. What version are we on at the moment of OpenShift?
In our latest in production is 4.5.
So I think maybe 4.4 or 4.5 it went into that release. So yeah, I know that's used out of the box, and I'm fairly sure a lot of the charts now, Helm v2 charts will still render and work in Helm v3, and that was a big part of it. Even though we have a lot of these changes under the hood, the idea was the APIs would stay the same. Now we have made some changes to some of the commands, but there's still aliases still there. Now the only one catch with the charts is around CRDs, and the reason, so with CRDs now, they no longer use the CRD install hook. So if anyone's been using that, it's no longer, what happens with Helm v3 is it ignores it and puts a warning in and says, we're not going to handle it that way. So the only way it's handling it then is the CRDs need to be put in the CRDs directory, and they're installed before anything else in the chart is installed. The reasoning behind this is Helm has been unable to manage CRDs correctly. And this is, I think, probably indicative of what's happening in Kubernetes as a whole around CRDs, and that there's still a lot of difficulties with CRDs because of the fact that CRDs can be updated on the fly without changing APIs. And if you delete a CRD, that removes that for every single instance that was using it. So what that means in that situation, being cluster wide, that if chart A installed the CRDs and then chart B used those CRDs, and then a chart C came along and decided to delete the CRDs, then chart A and chart B lose the particular CRD. So we, as a whole, we just felt we couldn't manage it end to end. So the idea here was that they simplified the process for CRDs, and it's just the installation of CRDs now, no updates or deletes. So the key here is that if you want to use CRDs, you want to manage it from a cluster-wide perspective, because they are cluster-wide. So you need to have a knowledge of what's happening across your cluster and who is using the CRDs in your cluster. So that's not something that comes back at this moment yet from Kubernetes. It may change, but you still don't know who has the CR instances of the CRDs. So the idea was to simplify it. But apart from that, your Helm v2 charts will still render. I suppose the only thing is going forward, and if eventually, if and when Helm v3 moves to Helm v4 down the line, then you would need your charts then brought up to the Helm v3 capabilities. And there's also been a simplification around that process. So it's worth doing that. So what it means now is that if you've been using dependencies, you no longer need a requirements file. You can now put that into the existing chart.yaml file, and it simplifies the process like that. And then there's also capabilities around library charts that you can use as well. So the old common charts are now baked into the to the Helm core itself. So a couple of capabilities like that that's worth picking up on. And I suppose that's something that I didn't add at the start, and it was remiss of me. But I suppose one of the key aspects around Helm 3.2 was simplification, robustness, and security. And they were probably the three cornerstones of the release. And I suppose everyone points at, Tiller, and I suppose Tiller's kind of an easy target on that. But I think Tiller, one of the biggest things of Tiller being removed was simplification, really. I know we'll touch security in a minute, and everyone thinks of security straight away, but you could make Tiller secure. But it was around simplification where we were able to remove a good 40-50% of code out of the code base. And then no longer we were doing indirectly talking to the Kubernetes API service. We're now able to talk directly to Kubernetes API service. And also it removed the kind of intermittent failure that people got from time to time around the gRPC communication towards Tiller, that sometimes it just dropped for no reason, or there was problems around proxies, etc. Around robustness, then it was making it more robust with the simplification, no longer having Tiller in it and being able to talk directly to and fro to Kubernetes. And then finally around security, that bringing that RBAC capability in, and where we could now use user security. So what I mean by that was whatever your authentication, authorization, and then your access for you as a user when you run a command, that's the way now when you run a Helm command, it takes the same from your kube configuration. Whereas previously it was being run under Tiller. So however Tiller was configured, everything was being run under its it as a user, and it's RBAC basically. So yeah, I suppose they'd be the key aspects to the release, and why we think it's a much more I suppose progressive release, where we've learned from over the years as Kubernetes has grown as well.
Ah, that was great. Thanks, Martin. And if you can please provide me those links, three links, that'll be great. Or if you can share the deck with me later, that's good too. I'll put the links. Sure,
not a bother. I'll just stop sharing there, and you should have it back.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Thanks again, Martin. And I see Khalid just joined, so welcome, Khalid. Martin has just completed the talk on Helm, but he will be sharing the deck later on, and some of the links. So, and we have recording. Yeah. Other than that, I shared the agenda link. I'm not sharing my screen just for the link. Because there's not much, but we had a KubeCon session last week for the KubeCon North America 2020 virtual, Brad, Richard, and myself. It was great. Brad, Richard, please feel free to add anything, but I just put that in the agenda just to have a quick updates on that. I think it really went well, as Brad tweeted. It was one of the relaxing session. Watching us talking, and but the best part was, I think, the Q&A at the end. A lot of good questions, questions on rocks supporting I think GPU nodes, right? Security aspects for OpenShift, and there were a lot of good questions. So that was very satisfactory. And it was good. We used all our time, the 10 minutes of question answers. So that was really good. Brad, Richard, you want to share anything about the session?
I just really liked the participation from the audience. We got lots of great questions, so that was always good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, I was a bit surprised as far as how many people and the volume of questions. So I'm pleasantly surprised that worked out that way. I don't know. I'm curious if others attended a lot of other sessions, if it is a similar takeaway that the virtual KubeCon seemed to maybe work okay for them in these sessions.
Yeah.
I did not, so I don't know.
I attended a couple of other sessions, and yeah, I think it works all right. Like I think in a real KubeCon, you get a little bit more dynamic interaction, right, where you can see the audience and the speakers can see and interact. But otherwise, I think it's best given kind of there's no cost to it, or relatively low cost to it, no travel, no other things. It's a good way of getting an overview of what's going on in the Kubernetes community. And I did enjoy that. I was the one that asked the GPU question, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I did enjoy your session. It was a good discussion afterwards, I thought.
Yeah. There were a few really good questions, right? You know, GPU one was one, but yeah, a few others. So it was good. I mean, really good interactions, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think, you know, would I give a little bit of a synopsis as well, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I thought it was very good. And I think my hat goes off to the CNCF and all the people who helped organize it, because it cannot be that easy to, you know, even though there's a lot of work to do in the on-premise and getting your location, etc. It cannot be easy trying to do it, trying to get a platform to work. And, you know, there was some teething problems with the platform, but I think as a whole, it worked quite well. There was a couple of really good talks. Justin Garrison really put a big effort into his animation talk. And I think he probably has set the bar highest for people from now on. I don't know if anyone will get to that level again. Definitely around the hallway track was really good. People were putting on Rambly, which was my first time seeing it. It kind of reminded me of a kind of a softer version of Civilization, if people are old enough on this call to remember Civilization, the game. So it was kind of a little bit like that, but it was just nice. You could go in there, you could stand, and they were also piping the talks in through it via I think it was in through Twitter. I'm not sure what it was coming in through actually. And also then it was nice as well that people were opening a Zoom call, so you could get to know people in the hallway as well. So yeah, there was a lot of discussion around there, and you could jump in, you could jump out, and you could go from things. So yeah, I think it was quite good that way. Yeah.
Yep. No, I enjoyed a lot of flexibility as well. As Khalid said, just sitting from your home, so it's great. Dennis, Benedetto, you have any questions? Anything you want to share? Have you had a chance to attend the KubeCon or anything?
I did not. I had plans to, but that last week something came up during that week, and I was bogged down, so it didn't happen. But I just heard somebody say that something about in the hall. Were there people actually there, or I thought it was 100% virtual? Were you speaking figuratively when you said something?
Virtual hall, yeah.
Virtual hall.
Okay, I got you. I was gonna say, wait a minute, because that was in Boston, which I'm not that far from. I was hoping to attend in person, but that was out. But then the week got away from me. So I'm glad to hear a bunch of stuff happened over there. I tried to actually catch some of the stuff on YouTube. I thought they'd have the sessions up a lot faster than they did, but I didn't see much going on.
Yeah, if you go into the different schedule and you click on the schedule, the talk is up there. So if you click on it, you'll see it.
Okay, great.
With regards to the hallway, Dennis, what they did there was like a virtual, as Brad and Sadel said, it was like a virtual hallway. So what they had was once you went into the CNCF Slack workspace, there was a series of channels in there. And if you clicked, I think it was number 2 was the hallway channel. I think IBM was number 6 with all the other vendors. So if you got that channel, a load of chat went on there. You know, people were very, very inclusive. And then they also started kicking off a Zoom session every day. Usually once people from the East Coast came online, And then, you know, you could bop in there, you could stay in there all day, or you could come in, you could come out, discussions were happening there. And what was nice was I got to know a couple of people I hadn't met before. I met, you know, Pop, which I think you know, Brad. So Dan, he was a really nice person. So yeah, so it was nice like that, you know. But what was nice about it as well, I suppose, was even though I prefer the face-to-face, you wouldn't always get a chance to have all those people together around at once. So that kind of happened a bit as well from time to time.
Oh, that's great. I wish I would have intended that, because it sounds like just a brand new experience beyond just the Kubernetes, just the whole virtual experience would have been interesting.
Yep, absolutely. The only bad thing is, you know, you miss meeting people. So Amsterdam, you know, Benedetto and I plan to meet there, you know, and have a little SIG meeting there, but it was virtual, so we had to cancel that plan. So that's the only thing, you know, you don't get to see people in person or first time, right? Kind of many people you meet very first time. Yep. Benedetto, you have anything you want to share, anything, or all good?
No, not particularly. Just want
Okay.
to say we did our Helm 2 to 3 migration already a few months back.
Yay.
The doc was okay. You guys are still showing in IBM how to install Helm 2 for storage plugins, so probably would be best to remove that now at this point. I'll open an issue maybe in the GitHub documentation repo.
Yeah,
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
that'd be. And any place else you see it, yeah, please open up requesting it. Now maybe it's in the pipeline, but I still think Benedetto, it'd be worth opening an issue with it. But,
Yeah, I will.
thank you for the feedback.
No worries. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Anything else, Brad? Anything? I think we're there with the time, so we can wrap up if there are no other questions.
No, I think we covered everything. Great meeting, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone who celebrates it. So here in the US.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the States.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, and happy
Thanks.
Thanksgiving for you guys in the States. Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Martin, thanks for the talk. And talk to you later. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, folks.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.